For almost 10 years, I raised Megan and Chloe as if the word step had never existed. I attended school meetings their biological father forgot. I sat beside hospital beds. I repaired their cars, paid deposits, covered overdue bills, and answered calls that came at hours when responsible people were usually asleep. Their father, Daniel, lived mostly through promises. He was always going to visit next weekend. Always going to send money soon. Always going to make things right. I was the man who actually did. I never asked Megan or Chloe to call me Dad. I never removed photographs of Daniel from the house. I never tried to erase him. I only tried to fill the empty spaces he left behind. For years, I believed they understood that. Then came the argument. It started over Chloe's latest disaster. She had ignored my advice, lent her car to someone I had warned her about, and the vehicle came back damaged. When I told her I would not immediately pay for the repairs, she exploded. Megan joined her. My wife, Laura, stood near the sink silent. "You act like you control everything," Megan said. "I'm trying to help." "You're not our real father," Chloe snapped. "You never will be. Stop trying to replace him." The room became painfully still. I looked at Laura. She lowered her eyes. That silence hurt more than the words. I could have shouted. I could have listed every payment, every sacrifice, every night I had spent cleaning up problems Daniel had helped create by never being there. Instead, I nodded. "All right," I said. That was all. The next morning, I changed nothing visible. I went to work. I came home. I ate dinner. But I stopped trying. When Megan complained about trouble at work, I listened without offering solutions. When Chloe's insurance payment increased, I didn't reach for my wallet. When their phones broke, their tires wore out, or their plans collapsed, I let them handle it. I wasn't cruel. I simply stepped out of the role they said was never mine. The house slowly changed. Requests disappeared first. Then conversations. Within a month, we lived together like strangers sharing a waiting room. Laura watched me carefully, perhaps expecting anger. But anger would have meant I was still fighting for a place in their lives. I wasn't. I had finally accepted the place they had given me. Nowhere. Reality reached them quickly. Megan had to arrange her own repairs after scraping her car. Chloe borrowed money from a friend and learned that friends expect repayment. Daniel promised to help both of them, but promises were the only currency he had ever possessed. Then, just after midnight one Thursday, someone knocked on my office door. It was Chloe. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. She had gone to a party with people she barely knew. Her friend had abandoned her after an argument. Her phone was almost dead, and she was stranded 30 miles away until a stranger drove her near our neighborhood. "I called Dad," she whispered. I knew which father she meant. "He didn't answer." I said nothing. She swallowed hard. "I didn't know who else to call." Those words should have satisfied something bitter inside me. They didn't. I took my coat and drove her back to retrieve her car. On the way home, she waited for the lecture. None came. Finally, she asked, "Aren't you going to say anything?" "Yes." I pulled into the driveway but left the engine running. Support is not a service you demand from someone you refuse to respect. Trust is not a door you slam shut until you need shelter. And family cannot exist only when there is a bill, a crisis, or a midnight phone call. She stared at the dashboard. "I'm sorry." "I believe you're scared," I said. "I don't know yet whether you're sorry." That truth wounded her. It was supposed to. The following morning, Chloe told Megan what had happened. For the first time, neither of them defended themselves. They began changing in small ways. Megan found extra work instead of asking me for money. Chloe arranged her own car repairs. They stopped treating my help as something automatic. They asked before assuming. They listened before arguing. They apologized without demanding immediate forgiveness. I did not return to the old role. That man had given too much and required too little. What grew in his place was more careful, more honest. Months later, I found Chloe sitting alone at the kitchen table. She looked at me and said, "I understand now." "Understand what?" "You never tried to replace Dad." Her voice broke. "You were just the person who stayed when he didn't." For years I had wanted to hear something like that. When it finally came, it did not feel like victory. It felt like grief being given a name. I sat across from her. "We can't undo what happened," I said. "I know. But we can decide what happens next." She nodded. That was how we began again. Not as a perfect family. Not as father and daughters pretending blood did not matter. We rebuilt ourselves as people who had finally learned that love without respect becomes exploitation, and respect without action is only another empty promise. They stopped expecting me to rescue them. I stopped believing sacrifice alone could earn love. And slowly, trust returned, not because they asked for it, but because they lived differently. I still wonder whether I should have spoken sooner, before resentment hardened inside me. I wonder whether withdrawing was wisdom or punishment. But tell me honestly, when a family only values your presence after you remove it, is stepping away an act of cruelty? Or is it the first honest thing you have done? A month passed after the night Megan and Chloe told me I would never be their father. 30 days. That was all it took for the house to forget how to breathe. Before, there had always been noise. Chloe calling from the hallway because her car would not start. Megan asking me to read an email before she sent it to her manager. Laura reminding me about payments, appointments, repairs, and small emergencies that somehow always became my responsibility. Then the requests stopped. Not because their lives had become easier. Because they had learned I was no longer coming to the rescue. I still woke at 6. I still made coffee and left enough in the pot for everyone. I still paid the household bills I had agreed to pay. But I no longer searched their faces for trouble. I no longer asked questions whose answers would become burdens placed in my hands. At first, Megan seemed relieved. She mistook my withdrawal for surrender. She walked around the house with the confidence of someone who believed she had won an argument. Then her car began making a grinding sound. For years, she would have left the keys beside my coffee cup and said, "Can you look at it?" This time, she drove it until the brakes failed in a supermarket parking lot. The repair cost more than she had saved. Daniel promised to send money. He did not. Chloe's problems came differently. She had always lived as though consequences were distant things that happened to other people. She spent her paycheck before it arrived, borrowed from friends, and believed apologies could erase debts. When her phone service was suspended, she stared at me across the dinner table. I kept eating. Laura finally asked, "Aren't you going to help her?" I placed my fork down carefully. "Has Chloe asked me?" Chloe's face hardened. "I shouldn't have to beg." "No," I said. "You should have to plan." She pushed away from the table and disappeared upstairs. Laura watched me with wounded eyes, but I felt no triumph. Only exhaustion. They thought I was punishing them. I was not. Punishment requires involvement. It requires anger, attention, and the desire to force someone to change. I had none of those things left. I had simply stopped protecting them from the lives they insisted were none of my concern. The silence spread through the house like winter. Megan stopped telling us about work. Chloe came home later and later. Laura moved between them and me, trying to repair a bridge she had watched them burn. Sometimes, late at night, she whispered that the girls were young. "They didn't mean it," she said. "They meant it when they said it. They were angry. So was I. But you're the adult." I turned toward her in the darkness. I was also the adult when I worked overtime for Megan's tuition. I was the adult when I drove through a snowstorm because Chloe was stranded. I was the adult every time Daniel failed them. Being the adult cannot mean accepting contempt forever. Laura had no answer. Her silence was familiar. Then came the Thursday night that changed everything. Rain struck the windows in hard, uneven bursts. Laura had gone to bed early. Megan was staying with a friend. I was in my office reviewing reports when the clock passed midnight. At 12:17, my phone rang. Chloe. I watched her name glow on the screen until the call ended. A moment later, she called again. I answered. For several seconds, there was only breathing. Then she said, "Brian?" She had not called me by my name in that frightened tone since she was 14. "Where are you?" "I don't know exactly." Music and shouting echoed behind her. Somewhere nearby, a man laughed. Chloe lowered her voice. "I came to a party with Natalie. She left with someone. We had a fight. My car is blocked in, and there are people here doing things I didn't know they were going to do. Did you call the police?" "No. I can't. Please don't ask why." "Did you call your father?" The silence answered first. He didn't pick up. Of course he did not. Daniel existed best when nothing was required of him. He was a photograph, a birthday message, a promise spoken from a safe distance. But when fear entered the room, he vanished. "I called 6 times," Chloe whispered. "He sent me to voicemail." "And Megan?" "Her phone is off." Another shout sounded behind her. Chloe began breathing faster. "I know what I said to you," she murmured. "I know I have no right to ask." That sentence reached somewhere inside me I had tried to bury. For one bitter moment, I wanted to tell her to call the man she had chosen. I wanted her to feel the full weight of the line she had drawn between us. Then I remembered her at 8 years old, asleep against my shoulder after a fever. I remembered teaching her to ride a bicycle. I remembered every time she had reached for my hand before she learned to be ashamed of needing it. "Send me your location," I said. Her breath broke into a sob. I took my keys from the desk. But before I opened the office door, I looked at my reflection in the darkened window and understood something that frightened me. I was going to help her. But I would never help her in the same way again. The drive across town felt longer than it really was. Rain blurred the windshield, and every passing streetlight stretched into pale ribbons across the glass. Chloe had shared her location, but she stopped answering my calls after that. Whether her phone had died or panic had silenced her, I didn't know. I only knew she was alone. When I reached the address, the house looked exactly like the kind of place responsible people avoid after midnight. Loud music shook the walls. Cars were parked across the lawn. Empty bottles glittered beneath the porch light. I spotted Chloe sitting on the curb. Her knees were pulled against her chest, her makeup streaked by tears and rain. She looked smaller than I had seen her in years. She stood when she recognized my truck. "I'm sorry," she whispered before I had even opened the door. "Get in." She obeyed without another word. For several miles neither of us spoke. The heater slowly chased the cold from the cab, but the silence remained. Finally, she asked the question she had been carrying since I arrived. "Why did you come?" I kept my eyes on the road. "Because leaving you here would have made me someone I'm not." She nodded slowly. "I called Dad 6 times. "I know. He texted an hour ago." I glanced toward her. "What did he say?" She unlocked her phone with trembling fingers and handed it to me at the next red light. "Sorry. Busy tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." That was all. One sentence. No questions. No concern. No attempt to find out whether his daughter was safe. I handed the phone back without commenting. There was nothing left to say. When we reached home, the kitchen light was still on. Laura rushed toward the front door the moment she heard us enter. She wrapped Chloe in her arms, crying openly. "Oh, thank God." Chloe hugged her mother for only a second before looking at me. "I need to talk to Ryan." Laura wiped her eyes. "Tomorrow." "No," Chloe said quietly. "Tonight." She followed me into my office and closed the door behind her. For a long moment, she remained standing. "I deserve whatever you're going to say." I leaned back in my chair. "I wasn't planning to lecture you." She frowned. "You're not angry?" "I was angry a month ago." She lowered her head. Then what are you? Tired. Those words seemed to hurt her more than shouting ever could. I know I treated you terribly. You did. I kept thinking you'd always be there. I was. I know. Silence settled between us again. Finally I spoke. Do you understand why things changed after that argument? She nodded weakly. I think so. No. I shook my head. I don't think you do. She looked at me, waiting. You believed support was something you could demand while denying the relationship that made it possible. You wanted every responsibility of a father without accepting any respect for the man carrying it. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. I wasn't trying to replace your father, Chloe. I never wanted that position. I know. I wanted something much smaller. What? Basic respect. She covered her face with both hands. I failed you. You failed yourself first. The room became painfully quiet. After several moments she whispered, Can things ever go back? I answered honestly, No. Her shoulders fell. But they can become something better. She looked up. Better? The old relationship depended on me solving every problem before either of you learned from it. That wasn't love anymore. It was dependence. She listened without interrupting. If I'm going to help you in the future, it won't be because you expect it. It'll be because we've built enough trust that helping makes sense. She nodded slowly. So, if I make another mistake, you'll solve it first. And if I can't, you'll ask. That's all? Not quite. She waited. You'll ask with the understanding that I'm free to say yes or no. She stared at me for several seconds before quietly saying, I've never thanked you for anything, have I? I smiled sadly. Very rarely. I'm sorry. I believe you. For real? For the first time. She cried openly then, not because I had forgiven her, but because forgiveness had not erased the consequences. As she stood to leave, she paused at the doorway. I'll earn your trust back. I looked at the frightened young woman standing there. Words would have been easy. Promises were easy. Her biological father had built an entire life out of promises. No, I said softly. You won't earn it with words. She nodded once. Then I'll earn it with what I do. For the first time in many weeks, I believed that might actually be possible. The morning after I brought Chloe home, the house felt different. Not healed. Not forgiven. Just awake. Laura stood at the kitchen counter making coffee when I came downstairs. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and the silence between us had the weight of an unfinished argument. She told me what happened. She said. I opened the cupboard and took out a mug. All of it? She said you came for her without asking questions. I asked enough. Laura watched me pour the coffee. She also said you spoke to her afterward. I did. Ryan, thank you. I looked at her then. The gratitude sounded sincere, but it arrived years too late. She had thanked me for repairs, money, rides, and favors before. She had never thanked me for standing alone inside a family that treated my love like an obligation. I didn't do it for you, I said. Her face tightened. I know. No, Laura. I don't think you do. She lowered her eyes. For nearly 10 years, she had watched me fill every empty space Daniel left behind. She watched her daughters call when they needed money and disappear when I needed respect. Whenever they crossed the line, she asked me to be patient. Whenever I grew tired, she reminded me they were young. But she never reminded them that I was human. I should have defended you, she whispered. Yes. The answer came quickly. It startled both of us. I kept thinking they would grow out of it, she said. I thought forcing them to accept you would make everything worse. So you allowed them to reject me. I didn't mean to. Silence has meaning, Laura. She gripped the edge of the counter. I was afraid they would think I had chosen you over them. And what did you think I would believe? She had no answer. For once, I did not rescue her from the discomfort. Megan came downstairs a few minutes later. She looked from her mother to me and immediately sensed something had shifted. "Where's Chloe?" "Sleeping," Laura said. Megan opened the refrigerator. "She sent me a strange message last night." I said nothing. She turned toward me. "She said you picked her up." "Yes." "From where?" "That's her story to tell." Megan closed the refrigerator without taking anything. The arrogance I had seen a month earlier was gone. In its place was caution. Maybe even shame. "She called me first," Megan admitted. "My phone was on silent." I waited. "I didn't see it until this morning." "That happens." My calmness unsettled her more than anger would have. "She could have been hurt." "Yes." "And Dad didn't answer." "No." She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms as though holding herself together. "You went anyway." "I did. After what we said." I looked directly at her. "What you said changed our relationship?" It didn't erase my conscience. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. "I thought you were trying to punish us." "I was trying to protect what remained of me." That sentence seemed to reach her. She sat at the table slowly. For years, Megan had been the harder of the two. Chloe acted without thinking. Megan thought carefully and still chose cruelty. She understood which words would wound most deeply, and during the argument, she had used every one of them. "You really stopped caring, didn't you?" she asked. "No." My answer surprised her. "I stopped proving that I cared." She looked confused. "There's a difference?" "There has to be." I sat across from her. "Caring about someone doesn't mean carrying every consequence for them. It doesn't mean accepting disrespect because they might need you later." Megan stared at her hands. "My car is still at the repair shop." "I know. I had to take extra shifts." "I know that too." "Daniel said he would help." I almost smiled at the familiar sentence. "Did he?" "No." The word barely escaped her. For the first time, she did not defend him. She did not explain that he was busy, struggling, confused, or unlucky. She simply allowed the truth to remain in the room. He had failed her. Again. "I hated you for not paying," she admitted. That was easier than being angry with him. Her head lifted sharply. I had struck the truth. "You were here," she said. "He wasn't." "Exactly." Tears finally slipped down her face. "You were the only person close enough to blame." I nodded. She wiped her cheeks angrily. "That doesn't excuse what I said." "No. I know you never tried to replace him." "Do you?" "I think I do now." I leaned back. Understanding born from hardship can disappear when comfort returns. I had seen apologies rise out of panic before. Danielle had made hundreds of them. "I'm not asking you to believe me yet," she said. "That's good." "I'm going to pay the repair bill myself." "That's also good." "And I'll repay the money you gave me last month." "I didn't ask for that." "I know." Something in her voice had changed. Not submission. Responsibility. That afternoon, Chloe came downstairs and joined us. She looked embarrassed when she saw Megan, but the sisters did not argue. They sat together at the kitchen table and spoke quietly about the night before. For once, neither asked me to fix anything. They made a plan. Chloe would stop going out with people she barely knew. Megan would keep her phone on at night. They would share their locations when traveling and save emergency money from every paycheck. Small decisions. Ordinary decisions. But they were theirs. Over the next several weeks, I watched them struggle. Megan worked weekends. Chloe sold clothes she no longer wore and paid her overdue phone bill. When another problem appeared, they did not immediately bring it to my door. They tried first. Sometimes they failed. Sometimes I helped. But now they asked instead of demanded, and when I said no, they accepted it. Trust did not return like sunlight. It returned like a damaged bone healing beneath the skin, slowly, painfully, invisible until one day I realized the house was no longer silent. There were conversations again. Careful ones. honest ones. And for the first time, I was not valued because I could save them. I was valued because I was there.